Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sanderlanche reading Mistborn Book 2, Well of Ascension. I am Dak, and as always we are here with...
Data?
Jamie.
And I'm Joe.
Didn't know where he was going with that one. So this week we are reading chapters 29 through to 31. The first couple of chapters, really meaty shit of Vin and Orosur talking about Zane, and then Vin and Sayes talking about the Deepness, which is what we're really here to see. And then we meet Phil and talk politics, and it ends on one hell of a goddamn cliffhanger. So strap in, this shit's getting real.
Elders, tellers, keepers of the bottom, treasures of the dirt. Russian string, we swivel and sing and dig for the annals of the earth. And we try to keep a little beauty in the world. All that died, we keep it in our hands.
Yeah, okay, so we got not exactly the action that you guys have been begging for the last few episodes, but we got some interesting stuff here. What did you guys think of these 3 chapters?
Okay, we didn't get the action, but we had like a solid chapter devoted to what is the Deepness and what we were hoping for, like Vin and Sayes like looking at Quan's rubbing and talking about what the big monster is in all the legends. And I'm just like, cool, this is what I'm here for. Don't care if it's not action, this is what I wanted. So I think collectively, the first 2 chapters I loved. 3rd chapter, I'm like, all right, this is back to the politics. All right, cool, we'll deal with this. And then it ended on that bombshell. I'm like, well, okay, now you've got my attention. So I think collectively these 3 chapters are probably my favorite chunk we've read so far.
Yeah, I mean, no, not the action that you were asking for, but you especially have been asking for like more discussion of the Deepness since book 1. So I can, that is something to keep us tied over, I guess.
Yep, the beast got fed.
Yeah, I thought these were really good chapters, and yes, we didn't have this action that we're looking for, but yeah, I'm really pleased that we have progressed in some of our main storylines that we've had through here. Vin and Orsa are just great. I love their scenes together at this point. Oh, I just need to digress a little. I woke up one morning and for some reason in my head, I just had the line of Joe singing Vin and Orsa, 2 of a kind, in his voice over and over and over.
Oh,
and I'm really
yeah.
concerned that every time I read about Vin and Orsa, I'm going to dream about just that line over and over and over. And I was like, I almost need to hear Joe's entire little song because hopefully it'll just get out of my head then. It's just over and over and over. Anyway, This is what I think about sometimes when I read about Vin and Orsa. Anyway, I love their interaction. I was thinking about the same thing too about Vin sleeping. It's like, you really do need to sleep at some point. You are going to start going crazy. But she's going to come down from a massive pewter drag at some point. I quite liked the assembly chapter as well. I thought when Elend made his entrance and I'm like, oh, Vin's in a dress and, you know, he's doing all these things that Tindwyl wanted. He's making that show of, look, I am a leader. And I thought his play was very clever to be nominated again. So I really liked that. And then the shocking reveal at the end was pretty good as well. And yeah, the Deepness, I'm really glad that we're talking about it again, and the mist monster is starting to come back into play because that's just one of those mysteries. But it's always good when we got to this point in the Final Empire when they started putting the epigraphs back together, and it's like, okay, we've now read this information for the second time. We're starting to get these clues. Okay, we should be stitching this together by now and seeing where that goes. So yeah, really, really good read. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, they did give us like that whole section of the I almost said logbook. This is not logbook, of the metal sheet, whatever you want to call it, to reread.
Yeah.
The word wall.
It was pretty much all the same stuff we read before, but there's a couple little things
Extras.
at the end, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these chapters were cool. You know, the Orser chapter at the beginning was nice. Maybe it's because I'm just stuck on this theory, but I keep trying to fit what's happening in the scene to my theory that it's not actually Orser. And so going on that level, it's just like very interesting to me, kind of their dynamic right now. And then the second chapter, I almost wish when it started with him reading the Dovahkiin wall, the word wall, whatever you want to call it. when it started with that, I was almost like, can this just be the whole chapter? Can he just read this to us? That would be great. I just want to hear the rest. Like I just want the whole chapter to be him reading the rubbing and to its completion, and just, we're done. We know what's going on.
Halfway through the books, the epigraphs just stop.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at it. And then the third chapter, I didn't enjoy it until, like Jamie said, Ellen comes in with his posse, if you will, and it's just like he's doing what he needs to be doing. He's showing up. He's acting the part of his leadership has been lacking in, and he does have a very clever play to put this guy as a chancellor who he knows has always kind of supported him, and so is also a nobleman and who will respond to honor with honor. So yeah, it was very cool. And you guys are so excited about this cliffhanger. I was like, this is stupid. Why would Cett be in the middle of all of these people in the assembly? Like Ellen's assassin is across the room. Like that's the dumbest thing you could do. Like I would just kill him if I was Vin. Just kill him right there. Why wouldn't you? He's the king. He's the warlord with this giant army. Just kill him. But I guess the answer to that would be, then Straff's got a clear line to victory, because then he could probably get both armies. But anyway, we'll get into it.
It also doesn't really say much for Luthordel's security now. You've got someone that you know is on Strath's team is just sitting there, but he's a Mistborn, so you can't really stop him anyway. And now you have the king of your other enemy army. Like, are we just going to have the Koloss walk through at some point? Because who's watching the walls? Who's watching the gates?
Everybody's welcome. It's fine.
The Koloss just walk up with like sacks of vegetables, and it's like, we are here to deliver food. All right, let him in.
This old man has a beard and he's got a cart full of stuff. Yeah, come on in.
His cabbages.
My cabbages.
My cabbages. Yes, exactly.
One for every head of cabbage.
Okay. I guess let's get into these. There's actually, I'm sorry. Before we even start in, I wanted to touch on, because this first chapter is just all this Vin and Orsur kind of, and I agree. I love their relationship in this book. It's really awesome. And I thought that I would touch on this one bit from the annotations before we even get into it, because it's kind of an interesting backstory a little bit of a backstory on Orsur's character. It says, Vin and Orsur are quite well established by this point. Actually, Orsur and his character, the Orsur that we see in this book, are one of the items I brought over from Mistborn Prime. And so Mistborn Prime, what he calls Mistborn Prime, is the first book that he wrote called Mistborn, which actually has very little resemblance to this book. Like, the hero is this young man who's kind of he's kind of Kelsier, or maybe a little bit of Kavoth, like in his attitude. He's kind of a stereotypical young male hero who's like also a thief. And he says the book isn't anywhere near as good, which is why, obviously it never got published. And it takes, he took a couple of things from that book and brought them into this one. It had an early version of Allomancy. It had the Conjure sidekick, which he felt was one of the few things that actually worked in that book. So Orsur has like origins older than most of the other concepts in this book, including Vin. I don't remember if that male character in the first book was named Vin. I've read like the first chapter or so of that one, but it's just, the whole book is very different. The whole story of this one is very different than the story of that original one, but Orsur is one of the carryovers. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Interesting.
That's one of the books he actually says in the annotations. I don't know if this is even true anymore, but he says, if you ever want to read Mistborn Prime, email me and I'll send you an electric copy. He has several unpublished novels that he will send people copies of if they ask for it, or if they sign up for his newsletter, you get one of them. And you can tell why they're not published. They're not quite as good as the books that actually got published, but they're still pretty interesting. And there's one called Aether of the Night, which was supposed to be set in the Cosmere, kind of. It was partly before he came up with the Cosmere. But once you've read the Mistborn trilogy and then you read that book, you can see where like several pieces of that were taken and kind of ported into Mistborn as it appears in publication, and pieces of it ended up in like the Stormlight archives, and so you see that in a bunch of the different ones. He also has one called White Sand, which we won't be reading the prose version because it's unpublished, the prose version, but they changed it almost exactly. There's several changes, but they kind of ported it from that prose version into a graphic novel format. Ooh. And that is set in the Cosmere and actually has several important characters and details. So that is something that we will be reading as the graphic novel as we progress. But so I've read the prose and the graphic novel, and they're pretty much the same story. So you don't miss out on much with the graphic novel, except it's kind of rushed because they're shoving it into a graphic novel rather than letting him take his time with developing a story like we're reading here. Anyway, random side trick, but there's lots of cool unpublished stuff out there.
Wow, so you've got this guy who not only has published more books than most other authors, he's also not published more books than most other authors.
Oh yeah, and when we get into Elantris, the annotations will talk about it some. But Elantris was just the first book that he got published. It was like the 13th book that he wrote.
Oh, I think you've mentioned that before. I vaguely remember you telling us that. And
so yeah, he has a lot of unpublished stuff that, most of it is for good reason because it wasn't that good. And it's interesting to hear him talk about it because he goes on about how, he was trying to write these things and none of it was selling. And people were like, well, you need to try to write this stuff that's like more like the stuff that's popular right now. And so then there's like these aborted attempts at books that were like shorter because the popular fiction was shorter than these epic fantasy novels that he wanted to write, and more keeping with tropes that were popular in fantasy. And so he tried like a couple of books that were writing to this audience that people kept telling him he needed to be writing to, and then he hated them so much that he reacted against that by like, no, I'm going to write the Stormlight Archive, which is this giant 10-book epic, and the first book of that is going to be my next book, just to show you all. And then, of course, that one is now probably one of his most popular things ever. But anyway, sorry for the long side digression, but we have finally reached the end in the epigraphs of the fun facts about Alendi section. Because Quan is like, okay, and there were other proofs. Like, he's just been telling us this whole time, all the things that he felt proved Alendi was the hero of ages. He's like, there was other stuff, too, that only somebody trained in the lore of the Anticipation would have noticed. His birthmark, his hair turning gray when he was barely 25, which I'd never pictured him with gray hair before. I mean, I've read the book many, many times, and I just, in my mind, Alendi did not have gray hair, but he does. So, and he said he simply seemed to fit. So.
Maybe he just has gray hair that early because he's stressed as shit of trying to rule everything.
Right. And, you can only put so much on a wall, right? That's what he says. He's like, I don't have space for all the other things that I could say about him. I was wrong.
Yeah, that's the next epigraph, and I was going to get into it when we get to it, but it's just like, he's like, oh, I have to be brief. And I'm like, really? Now is the time when you're... Anyway. This guy.
He's a keeper, clearly.
You wonder, are there, like, rough drafts of this metal wall? Are there other metal walls scattered around somewhere where he's just trailed off halfway because he's like, shit, I don't have enough room, got to start over?
That is an excellent question. Maybe he did rough drafts on paper.
Yeah. Hopefully, before you carve it into stone.
Yeah, it's like when you start painting something and you realize that you don't have enough room and you have to squeeze the last 5 letters onto the thing. Nobody's been there? Okay, fine. Poor planning. I get it. It's, Okay, so we start out with Orsor, and he's being kind of sassy here. He's like, I was under the impression that people needed sleep. I guess I must be mistaken. His personality has definitely changed. And she notes that in this chapter. It's like he complains a lot more now. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he's not wrong. Vin's not Batman. We read in the comics Batman only sleeps 4 hours a night or something. But, she's got to sleep more than that.
She has pewter to help her not have to, which Batman doesn't have. So maybe she's better than Batman. You think of that?
No, nobody's better than Batman.
Well, Batman's just doing it without the pewter. That would probably make him better.
Right.
That's a good point. Yep.
He meditates enough, he can get REM sleep at 10 minutes at a time.
But the part that I found most interesting here is he tells her you barely sleep 3 or 4 hours each day. Nobody, Mistborn man or Conjure, can survive on a schedule like that for long. I don't think that we knew before now that Conjure needed sleep. They're weird bone-eating blobs. It never really occurred to me that they might need to take a nap.
It's a living thing. It's expending energy. It probably needs to, at some point, revitalize itself.
That's fair.
You spend your whole life trying to replicate something you ate. It's going to be hard work.
That's true. It can't be easy. And we find out that he eats... some stuff also in this chapter, but we'll get there.
Yep.
And she's thinking, how can I sleep when I can hear the thumping in the distance?
Hey, I totally get it. I can't even sleep in a room with a ticking clock.
Maybe it's a Mistborn thing. Zane hears the voice of God. Vin hears the drums of God. Like, just parts of a whole.
Wonder if there's like a guitar of God or something, and it's just a band.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trumpet. What Zane hears is actually the vocalist. The vocalist just sings "Kill him, kill him." That's the song that he's writing.
Kill him, kill Strap, won't you please?
God's a death metalist.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
And she is drawing parallels between herself and the logbook writer, Alendi. Like, he can't sleep when he lies down either. And then it turns out that she's waiting for Zane, and Orsor's just like, dude, he's not coming. And Orsor is concerned with how she's letting Zane. I don't even know how to say it exactly. He says, I don't think he's the person you believe him to be.
Yeah, and so when we get into this part is when I'm starting to like plug in my theory to this conversation. So obviously there has been some bonding between what we're calling Orsor and Vin. If this Orsor is actually the Straf Khandra, he knows about Zane. He probably knows a lot about Zane. And now that he's actually bonded with somebody for the first time probably in his entire life, that's not like another Khandra, he's concerned because he's like, look, there's a turn coming and I've been a part of it and you don't see that, and maybe this guy isn't it's like I'm trying to kind of tell you this guy's not a good person to be around.
Yeah. So you think the bonding is genuine, but he's still the imposter. He's not bonding to get closer as an imposter.
Right. It may have started that way, but I think at this point he's actually bonded with her.
Mm.
I mean, it makes sense. He's his explanation here is that Khandra are good judges of character because we have to practice to imitate people like so fully that we can tell stuff about people.
Yeah, but that's
also
pretty
makes
weak.
Sense. If they have to impersonate a person all the way down to their mannerisms and stuff, I think they probably really do study them very closely. So I buy it, but no, I get your point. It makes your thought makes just as much sense, if not more.
Yeah, but that would mean literally every person that they're going to imitate, they would have to like somehow monitor for a while before eating them. And that just seems unlikely based on how we've seen their contracts and their interactions with their masters so far.
And Vin ends the conversation just by kind of thinking like, he might be right, but he doesn't understand flying through the mists and sparring and stuff like us Mistborn do.
Yeah, it's so sexy and hot. I mean, how could he understand it?
I don't know, like everything Orsor said here, I'm just like, God damn, man, you are speaking exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen not too much more of Zane than Orsor has in the book. I mean, we've seen him a couple times with Straff alone, but we feel probably mostly the same way about Zane that Orsor does. So I don't put it totally out of realm of possibility that he could have come up with that on his own.
I'd be interested to reach out to the listeners at this point. Does anybody who's listening to the podcast, who's read these books, does anybody like Zane? Like, and keep in mind, we haven't got to the end of the book, and we don't know if he's a continuous character. But at this point, when you were reading this book, do you remember thinking, I like Zane?
Well, they like spook, so no accounting for taste, right?
Hey, you said it, I didn't.
But Vin kind of transitions the conversation into a more Orsor relevant direction, and she's like, hey, you know what? You can switch bodies if you want. If you don't like being a dog anymore, I don't want to make you do it. And he's like, he's trying to not admit it, and he has kind of excuses, but I think he kind of likes being a dog at this point.
Well, and then this just made me think of my theory even more. It's just like, well, he knows how close he can be and how undercover he can be as a dog and stay with her as much as he wants. Whereas if he were to go back to a human body, it would be kind of weird, right? He can't be in on all the secret meetings if somebody's like, who the hell is this guy? But I guess they think he's Orsor anyway. Because at this point in the book, I'm really wondering, like, what are the other crew members who know about Orsor think? Do they think he just disappeared, or? But
I believe she told Ellen when she was transforming him into a dog that she was going to tell everyone she had dismissed Orsor. Although then she says that later, I'm going to tell the rest of the crew later, like, the truth. But For the general population, she was going to be like, no, I've dismissed him.
We haven't seen her do that to the rest, though. Because, like, none of them acknowledge him as the dog. I guess they didn't really acknowledge him when he was Lord Reno either. But, like, she's still just kind of sitting there with, like, oh, you brought the dog. Okay, cool.
Well, she specifically didn't tell them that he was the dog because she was worried about an imposter as one of them.
Yeah.
Wait, was that right? I thought because no, hang on, she had the dog before they realized there was an imposter.
She had the dog before they realized. She has. I think the first time the crew and the dog kind of meet each other is when Breeze comes back into town.
When Breeze got back, which is just before they find out there's an imposter.
And that's when she tells Ellen, like in the carriage, oh, I'm gonna tell them just out in the middle of the square where everyone could hear didn't seem like the right place. And then they get to the palace and they find out about the imposter. And it's like, oh, wait, now one of them might be the imposter.
Maybe let's not tell them.
Right, okay.
I actually don't know if that was explicit. That's just kind of the way that I took it.
Yeah, that's the way I read it too.
She doesn't tell them after that. And we see them ask questions about the dog after that. And she's like, oh, whatever. But I think, I'm not trying to put down what you said. That makes actually a lot of sense. I hadn't thought of it that way in terms of your theory. In my mind, it's like a twofold thing where I think he likes being a dog because it's like he says early on, this body has a lot of benefits. Like it can run and jump, and the smell, the sense of smell is really good, and the hearing and all that stuff. But I also think that he says here, he's like, I'm not used to talking to my masters like candidly like this. I think if he had another body, there would be this impetus, like a human body. There would be this impetus to impersonate that person, to act like that person, and then you wouldn't have the opportunity for the same kind of like candid showing who he is as much as when he's in this dog body and doesn't have somebody to impersonate.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because at first he said he didn't like being in the dog body because his whole life is pretending to be somebody else, but now he's gotten used to being himself with her. Yeah. And he's like, well, I kind of like just being myself.
I get to make sarcastic comments to my master.
Yeah, Orser and Sazed, man. Sazed does it a little, I feel like a little more subtly, but it's there.
Yep, he's a sassy terraceman sometimes. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, speaking of bodies, are we planning on going back to the palace? Because I want to get some food and sleep. And this is where she's like, well, he certainly complains a lot more now. And I like something that I don't even know if I picked up on before we read them again this time, but because I read so fast that I kind of skim over some stuff sometimes. As she comes down from the wall, it's like the wall is too high for Orsor to have jumped up there or to jump back down. So she carries him down, which implies that she must also have carried him up. So it's a very different attitude towards him than she was taking at the beginning, where she's like, keep up if you can.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a very different experience for him as well. He probably has never had a master like care for him in that way, where it's like, I don't care if you fall off a cliff and break your legs this time, like, do whatever you got to do to keep up with me. But she's obviously taking care of him because she wants him to be there.
Yeah. Just small details about their relationship and the way that it's changed. I also like when she's like, sometimes I wish Ellen weren't so noble, and Orser has a very strong opinion that he did the right thing. He made a contract. It was his duty to keep to the contract no matter what.
Right. The blob monsters are lawyers.
The contract is life, so he gets it. And then we find out he's like, the meat. She's like, let's go back to the palace. And he's like, excellent. The meat that I set out should be perfect by now. And we find out that he likes what he calls aged meat.
Yep, he likes minging old meat.
Vintage, 17 hours ago.
I thought you were going to tell the maids not to throw it away. And she's like, what am I supposed to say? Please don't throw away the rancid meat. My dog likes to eat it.
Which actually wouldn't be that bad of a thing to say, I feel like.
No.
Yeah, no, that seems perfectly reasonable.
That's his argument.
I was half expecting there to be like another body sitting there or something. It's like, tell the maids not to throw it away again. I was like, guys, how are you going to get around this?
Yeah, there's a corpse in my room. Don't mess with it. Just leave it there.
My dog likes to eat that. You're trading your dog to eat human flesh? Well, not living.
Yeah. And you're next, so get out.
Well, it's like, yeah, if I don't have this one, I got to find somebody to feed him, right? So maybe you should leave it alone. Orser is like, aged meat is like aged wine or aged cheese. It tastes better when it's a few weeks old. Oh.
Firstly, wine needs a lot longer than that. Oh dear.
And she's just like, man, I guess it's like a side effect of being related to scavengers, which, yeah, I guess it makes sense. The mist wraiths roam around out there eating whatever dead animal they can run across.
Yeah.
Also, like, he says, oh, when I imitate a human, I never get to have a good meal, but dogs get to eat what I like. I'm like, so what happens when you're having a meal as a human? Do you just like, when he was Lord Reno, did he have like a secret room at the back of the villa where he just kept meat so it could rot for a while before he ate it?
No, I assume that if he's impersonating him, he just actually eats the stuff that the human would eat, and that's why he's like, I don't get to eat good stuff when I'm human. Because that wouldn't be in character for Lord Renu to have an outhouse full of rotten meat. He's an actor.
He's trying to set up trade deals, and it's like, what is that smell? Oh, that's dinner.
I'm not staying for dinner. Bye.
Yeah, you think drinking poisoned wine is a badass move? Why don't you eat some rotten meat in front of your enemy and then see what they think?
Dinner party with Straff and Orso. Just see who can last the longest.
Well, Straff had his own canter in the last book. We assume like that might be the one that's infiltrated at the moment, but maybe back in the day, like Straff and Tensoon would just have these little competitions. I'll eat poison. I'll eat rotten meat. Fine, you win.
Most human poisons probably wouldn't hurt a Kandra, I would imagine. So that might be a smart thing. If you think you're about to be poisoned, you're going to have them be your taste tester.
Be like Legolas and Gimli having the drinking contest.
Yeah.
The Kandra's just like, this doesn't affect me at all.
Yeah, can they get drunk? See, there's all sorts of interesting questions about Kandra. And then as we reach the end of the chapter and she's working her way back to the palace, she just has a lightning bolt, light bulb moment where she's like, I think I've figured out what the deepness is. And then we get to that epigraph. It's like, I must continue with the sparsest of detail. Space is limited. That doesn't stop him from adding adjectives and stuff.
Why take the time to write that you're running out of space when you're running out of space?
It's so true. Oh, I didn't even think about that.
If he said he wouldn't bother to carve it. He'd just say it.
Oh, damn it. I'm running out of space. Oh, God. Now I've got even less space. Oh, God. And Says reading, it's like, he just keeps writing, oh, God, what am I doing a lot?
That's why you got to write the proof first, and then you transfer it onto the thing.
I hope we just get an epigraph that has no spaces and no punctuation. Just
the very last
just
one.
A big long string of letters.
All squished together at the very bottom right corner of the thing. He says the other world bringers must have thought themselves humble when they came to me admitting they had been wrong. Even then I was beginning to doubt my original declaration, but I was prideful. Oh, pride. And yeah, and then the beginning of the chapter is just Sazed reading pretty much all the stuff that we've already read.
Which events we did that with the logbook last book too.
That's true. Yep. I'm afraid of how I'll be remembered. Well, Lindy's gonna kill me if he comes back. All the normal stuff. I'm just gonna scroll past that. We don't need to read all the details that we've read, but
this goes on for like a couple of pages too.
It goes on for a couple of pages, yeah. And Sazed is even impressed. He's like, man, it's amazing how much writing Quan managed to cram on this relatively small sheet.
Because you imagine, like, all right, he's written it out on paper, but then if he's putting it onto a steel that was, 5 feet by 5 feet or something, he's then got to just sort of measure his carving, because, like, carving presumably wouldn't be, like, to scale with handwriting. So he's like, all right, I've got to measure, make sure the letters are all right, that I actually will fit all of this here. There's all sorts of technical things that go into that.
Yeah, I agree. It's trickier than it seems, probably. Maybe this was heavily edited. Like, it ended up being way too long, and he goes back, he's crossing stuff out, and... I'll leave this sentence in about how I'm running out of space just to convey my feelings. But this information about exactly where the Well of Ascension is located, they probably don't need that. We'll take that out.
Yeah.
But we do get this new bit where he's like, as the one who found Lendi, I became somewhat important. There was a place for me in the lore of the Anticipation. I was the announcer, the prophet foretold to discover the hero. And so he couldn't renounce Lendi without announcing his new position of importance among his own people. I can see how you would hesitate at that point.
I'm the announcer. I'm the MC for Saving of the World.
And we find out that the World Bringers, which he mentioned, are kind of like the forerunners of the Keepers. The Keepers were founded, like inspired by the World Bringers, who were traveling teachers. And then he thinks Tindwyl is going to be very annoyed with me. He's really concerned about her. And then the window... Sorry, guys.
Tindwell is just default annoyed at everyone.
Yeah, no, I see that. It's what happens when you're a parent to however many.
Yeah, true.
You lose your patience for these kind of things. The shutters rattle, and he opens the window to find Vin hanging out there. And she's like, you should leave your window unlocked because I can't get in if it's locked. And Ellen got mad at me for breaking so many latches. It's like, Sazed, you're not allowed privacy. I'm going to need to come in your window sometimes, so you need to make sure that I can make it, okay? Deal? All right.
But also, if he lets Vin in, then what's to stop Zane getting in, for example? They've got to have some security.
I doubt that Zane would be worried about, breaking latches and if you wanted to get in there. But yeah, you're not wrong.
True. What was it you say, Dak? The best lockpick is a brick through a window?
Oh, yeah. First thing we learned at TAFE.
I assume that's not what they taught you to do in the majority of situations where your services were called for, though.
Oh, God, no.
That would be
I would
great,
have to
though.
look for a different company. I'd be like, don't call that one when you need somebody.
Don't call the brick through the window, guys. That's like their slogan, and I'm pretty sure it's real.
The brick picks.
Yeah, see?
Oh, wow.
It just rolls right off the tongue. And Vin notices what he's working on and gets kind of excited. She's like, hey, the deepness is mentioned here. And he's like, well, yeah, among other things. And they get into a discussion about the deepness where she asks him what it is. And he's like, well, there's lots of theories. Nobody really knows. Some people believe the Lord Ruler's official story, that it was a beast, which at this point, none of us believes the Lord Ruler's official BS, right?
I think that got thrown out the window pretty conclusively last book, yeah.
Perhaps it was invaders from another land. And let's see. Some people theorize that it's the Koloss, and that the Lord Ruler gained the ability to control the Koloss from the Well of Ascension, which I think that's a pretty decent theory, honestly, if we weren't getting into a whole other theory right here.
I mean, it's possible because, they made a point the Lord Ruler couldn't control them, so he could only, banish them or, effectively, or keep them penned up.
Well, yeah, but he had some degree of control because within a day of his death, they went crazy, even out on the edges of the Empire.
Yeah, true.
And she's like, I think it was the mist. And Say's just like, yeah, that theory's been proposed. And she's super disappointed.
It's like, I think it was the mist. Dun, dun, dun. And Say's just like, yeah, that's fair.
And he's this kind of scholar that he doesn't dismiss any theories out of hand, no, that's not right. But he also doesn't accept anything as quickly as Vin does. And that's a big part of this chapter is he's like, well, here's arguments against that. And she's kind of annoyed, no, I'm right. But he's just like, I got to look at all sides. That's the scholarly approach to things. And he brings up some of the things that argue against it, well, if it's just the mist, why call it something weird and the deepness that's all spooky? Why not just call it mist? And he brings up that the mist is here and it doesn't hurt anybody. So that's the biggest issue is if it was the deepness, then it doesn't seem very scary. And she points out that, well, it kills people now. And he's like, huh. Yeah, I guess it does.
Touché.
And she starts trotting out quotes from the logbook and stuff. She's like, it's not just the mist killing people. What if the mist is staying during the day sometimes? What if it stayed all the time? Plants would die, people would starve. And he's like, huh, yeah, no, that theory has merit. And she's like, it's not a theory, it's what's happening. And he's just amused that she's so certain so quickly.
Which is fair because we Say should know by now. Vin doesn't deal in theory. She deals with what's in front of her and just hard and fast facts.
Well, or what she decides is fact. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, true.
She's not always right, but she goes by instinct, which we talked about. But yeah.
Yeah. She's not big into what ifs.
Nope. She's not big into sitting and theorizing and going back and forth. She makes a decision and she goes for it. Which Ellen even says in that last set of chapters you read, to her credit, usually whatever instinct thing she decides to do, it ends up being better than whatever they've planned out. But she starts pulling out quotes from the logbook. She's like, hey, it says, he talks about how, and she still calls him the Lord Ruler, which I've heard objections to, where it's but she knows the Lord Ruler didn't actually write this. And I think it's just out of habit, because when she first read the logbook, they all called him the Lord Ruler and said the Lord Ruler wrote this.
Just easy shorthand.
Because she doesn't, like, despite the fact that Sazed has that, the rubbing that he took, she still doesn't know the guy's name who wrote the thing, unless he tells her. But yeah, the armies were useless against it, and she's like, you know, it doesn't say that, like, the armies were getting beaten, it says they're useless, and what's more useless than swinging a sword at some mist? Thousands died because of it, but it didn't say it actually killed them, it said they died because of it. She's got all sorts of, she's been studying. And then, as Sazed is reading her notes that she's handing him, and he's thinking about the same stuff we were just talking about, that she goes by instinct, and she's usually right. He's like, wait, did you write this yourself? And she's like, jeez, why is everybody bringing this up? And then Sazed has the interesting point that it's like, he talks about how, like, he senses this evil in the mist. And she's like, well, do you remember this part? The part about the mist, the creature or the shadow in the mist? And she tells him that she has seen it also. And he's like, oh, geez. Are you sure? And she is sure. And he's like, okay. He's kind of worried about this. But it's like that, in the logbook, it's clear that the mist spirit or creature, whatever it is, and the deepness are different things in the way he describes them. So that still doesn't really explain it. And she's taking all of this to kind of mean that, like, since Rashek didn't do what the hero was supposed to do, then the hero's going to have to come back at some point, right? And Sazed's like, oh, I get where this is going. But I don't know. What do you guys think of these arguments for it being the mist and Sazed's counter arguments here? Like, which side are we coming down on?
I think Vin's got some really good points. I had thought it was more likely to be some sort of monster, something doing something, but the fact that the mist would come in the day, block out the sun, I actually really liked her argument. I thought that made a lot of sense. I think Sazed is just going to be very non-committal, and I think his rebuttal, like, yes, things have been floated before, they've talked about all of these options, but she's raising points, but he's not going to just rush in and go, oh, yep, that sounds like it's got merit. Like, yes, he doesn't want to shut her down because they're good ideas, but he's not the type of person that's going to just come in and go, oh, well, yes, of course, that's the obvious solution. Where Vin is very, this is my gut instinct and this is what I'm going to go with, and yeah, that's what I believe now. So I think there's definitely more to her idea than he's giving her credit for, and I don't think he presented a strong case as to why she's wrong. But yeah, I'll be interested to see where those ideas go.
I don't know. If it does turn out that it's the mist, are we going to be disappointed that there's no tentacle monster?
Like kind
always,
of.
But
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to be sad there's no tentacle monster.
I mean, can't there be both, really?
Yeah.
There's so many things in this world. We have bone-eating blobs. Surely there is some sort of tentacle monster. Maybe it's not the deepness. Maybe what Vin is referring to is actually something called the darkness. So you never know.
Yeah, as a digression here, they do say octopuses are like, or octopi, however you say it. They do say, like, they're so genetically different from human beings that they could possibly be extraterrestrial. But there's room in the world for octopi, and there's room in the world for humans. So there's room in the world for a tentacle monster and this mist deepness thing.
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure. I mean, if it is the mist, could have tentacles of mist. It could all fit together.
Oh, mist tentacles. Yep. That's what it is for sure. It's just like an octopi just going sort of around the sun light and just wrapping his tentacles, mist tentacles around to plunge the world into darkness. It'll be great.
It'll be great. Yeah, I'm sure that's Vin's next line. Like, it'll be great. It's all good.
Yeah, I figured it out. It's fine.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, Sazed even says, I don't want it, your theories. You have good theories. I don't want it to sound like I'm just trying to bring you down, but I just have a scholar's mind. I got to question everything, and I'm too fond of arguing, probably. And he admits that his attitude tends to cause conflicts with the other keepers. And she kind of talks down about Tindwyl a bit here. She says she came here because of you, but she seems mean and she's not nice to you and this and that. And he explains that, well, first of all, he says that she's disappointed in him because he's been working against the Lord Ruler for more than 10 years. And all the other keepers felt that this was a very bad idea, that he was endangering everything by doing this, which is fair. The way that he explains it, like if he was captured, then they could have tortured all sorts of secrets out of him.
It's a bit reckless.
Yeah. And Vin, of course, is just like, well, yeah, but we didn't get captured, and we didn't fail. To be fair, they both did get captured at the end. Just saying. But it's like, we didn't fail. And Say's like, well, yeah, but we could have. She's like, yeah, but we didn't.
We didn't get captured. Yes, we did. You were there. I was naked. It was a laugh riot.
Good time was had by all.
Yeah, for someone who was fond of arguing, he didn't really bring that argument up, did he?
Of course, he kind of let himself be captured because she got captured, so maybe it's not as good an argument. I don't know.
It's not really being captured if that's what you were going for.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, she still got captured, so like the point stands. Like she said, we didn't get captured. Like, yeah, you did. In fact, you walked in there.
And he explains, like, she's a member of the Synod, however I don't know how you say that. And I'm defying them yet again by coming back to Luthadel right now. And Vin is very, black and white. She's like, well, it doesn't matter what could have happened. We won, so you were right to do all the things that you did. And she's like, well, I think you're doing the right thing right now. We need you. She's like, whatever those other people say, I don't really care. And he's just like, okay, thanks.
You're not going to win, Sayed.
And she goes, I don't think you have to listen to Tindwyl. She's the type who acts like she knows more than she does. It's a little bit catty maybe, but
it's like, loves Sayed, she loves Elend, and Tindwyl kind of talks down about both of them. So of course that's going to rub Vin the wrong way. It's like, no, these are my people. You don't get to talk shit about my people.
And Sayed is like, maybe take it a little easy on her because she's had a very hard life. And Vin's like, what do you mean? It's like, she was a terrorist mother. And we knew that they had these breeding programs. And I don't know if it occurred to anyone before when she mentioned, like in the previous set of chapters maybe, or the one before that she had kids. And Elend was like, oh, I thought that they were all eunuchs or whatever. But she was what Vin calls a breeder here. And describes it, she's birthed over 20 children, each with a different father. Had her first child at 14 and spent her entire life being repeatedly impregnated by strange men. Often bore twins or triplets. Yeah, no, it's kind of horrifying.
That's just fucked up.
This is the stuff that the Lord Ruler was doing to his own people to try to weed out Feruchemy. And Vin is like, I would have just killed myself, I think. But it turns out that, no, this was actually a success for the Keepers. Like, they worked to get her into a position where she would be selected for this. Because this gave them the chance to do exactly what the Lord Ruler's people were trying to stop, is to get more children born who could have Feruchemy. So she went into this intentionally, knowing what it would be like, starting at 14 years old. So that's hardcore. I can understand why Sayed has so much respect for her, because that's just terrifying.
Oh yeah, once he explained this, I'm just like, okay. I don't completely dislike Tindwyl. There have been like parts in previous chapters. I'm just like, all right, you're all right. I'll give you that credit. But then like he lays this out, and it's like, shit, yeah, she's committed.
Yeah, that's a word for it. But he says it's only during the last decade, her childbearing years through, that she was able to join and gain fellowship with the other Keepers. So I guess she became one of the leaders pretty quickly of their sect because of her commitment to what they're working for here. And I do not fault that.
No.
And Say's just like, okay. He says, by comparison, the rest of us have known a life of freedom, I think. And she's just like, great. Something else to feel guilty about. And he tells her to sleep, and she's like, yeah, okay, maybe a little bit. Vin, not sleeping this book. It's a thing. This is the next epigraph is extremely short. In the end, my pride may have doomed us all. So, yay. It's all been very upbeat, these epigraphs, right?
Yeah, happy times for Quan.
Yeah, the last chapter is a completely different point of view. And actually, so I was going to let me go back to the annotations, because I think there's something to do with this one I wanted to touch on, too.
Dickhead Phil. I mean, I don't think I've like actually responded to a character so quickly and just gone, man, fuck this guy. as I have with this character.
Yeah, no,
Like
I could see that.
even Straff Venture, like it took a while. I was like, look, I know he's bad, but it took me a while to go, man, this guy's a fucking just done with. Whereas good old Phil, half a chapter, I'm already just like, all right, this guy's a write-off, fuck him.
So what he says here is we get a random viewpoint here. No, Philin isn't going to be a major viewpoint in the book. He just
thank
fills
Christ.
I thought you might enjoy that after what you said. He just fills a role that you'll often see in my books, that of a section given to a random person because I want to show a different perspective on things. In this case, I wanted to show Elend entering the assembly hall as he would be seen by someone sitting on the inside. This was one of the dramatic scenes that I planned out from early on in the book, and it was nice to find a way to fulfill that. Of course, there's more to his point of view than just the one image. I also wanted to make him a little more memorable so that other assembly meetings would work better. I've reinforced Penrod a bit at this point, but I worried that Philin would be forgettable unless I gave him a viewpoint. So they want he wants us to have an investment in the characters in the assembly meetings, because we really don't know any of them except for Elend.
That's fair. I mean, it does lend to the fact that, we've said, the assembly bits aren't quite as interesting, probably because most of the important characters for those bits we don't really know. So,
yeah. Well, and I think it's nice to have, because this is definitely a different perspective. We have.
Oh yeah, does the job well.
Well, yeah, but I just mean the assembly is composed of like three groups: the noblemen, the ska, and the merchants. And the merchants are the ones that we don't really know anything about. Like, where did this class pop up from? Who are they, and how do they see themselves? Because we know about the ska, we know about the noblemen. We've known those two groups for a whole book and a half at this point. But the merchants are kind of something new.
Well, sort of. I mean, like the way Philin describes himself at the start is like he's not a ska. He's like a self-made guy who could be seen as ska, but thanks to his business enterprises, he's grown out of that, so he's above them. And you could make the argument that, in a way, that's kind of what Clubs was, because he was a ska, but he had his own craftsman shop set up, and he was able to function pretty independently from what we saw. So Philin seems like he has some of the attributes of Clubs in that regard, but he's also just like massively egotistical and full of himself because of it.
Yep, that's a good point. It is very much like Clubs, except I don't know if this guy has any, like, Clubs had this shop because he was a master woodworker. And we don't know if Philin, he just may be like a businessman. He may not have like that kind of skill like Clubs did. I mean, business is a skill.
He doesn't make things or build things. He just sells things. So he's not working with his hands. He's not as lowly as someone who has to make something themselves.
Yeah. But yeah, he's still grown out of the Scar mess to become something more than just like a peasant in a field.
In his own mind, if nowhere else.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Apparently he used to be named Lynn until a year and a half ago. And
he went for Philin.
Philin Frandu. It's like, why shouldn't I have a grand name? A lord's name. Yeah, okay, man. You know.
Phil.
Yeah, he's going to be trouble. I mean, he already is trouble, but...
Well, yeah, we find out here that he's the one who, like, engineered the voting Elend out of the King's plot. So, and apparently he did that with this specific plan in mind, that he was... bringing Cett in. And well, here, let's go a little bit before we, because he's got this thing where if you're one of these people who still looks at it as there's two categories, ska and nobleman, which is probably how the noblemen look at it, if we're being honest, because that's how they've done it their whole lives, then they still look at him as, oh, that's, he's just a ska. But he's like, no, I'm gonna be more than that, and I'm gonna show them. And he mentions in here, he's like, oh, well, that's going to change. And we don't know how until we get to the end and see something here. So he has a little conversation with Penrod. Not much of one. They're exchanging pleasantries. The red vest suits you. I hope you've gotten over the other night's ailments, Lord Penrod. It's a weird little conversation, but and Philin's sitting here thinking, oh, that old fool probably thinks he's going to be the king. And he even tells us here, he's like, my plan is not for me to be king. I have no interest in running a country. Seems like a terrible way to make money. Which probably should be true. Current politics shows that maybe it's not, but,
Whoa. Be careful. Listeners don't like politics.
I'm not getting... Sorry, yeah, no. I don't like politics, so it's fine. I like he has this picture of what Ellen's gonna do if he shows up. He's like, oh well, now see that's not fair. I should be king. Let me read you a book about why. Now can you all please give some more money to the ska? And Philin is just he starts having a conversation with I guess one of the other merchant members, Get True.
They all sit together, don't they?
Yeah. And he apparently talked Getru into this by just being like, we need a strong king who will keep the city from falling. And Phil's just like, no, Venture's stupid. He's a weak man and a fool. He knows that we don't want him around here anymore. And that's when Ellen comes in, and everyone is impressed. There's Mistborn at his side wearing a dress. And he even kind of thinks down about Vin. He's like, from the few times he'd spoken to her, he expected her to look awkward in noblewoman's gown. And yet she was walking gracefully and was actually rather fetching.
And then she death glares him.
Yeah. Until you meet her eyes and realize that she hates you. And he has to look away. Because, yeah, I would too. Vin's scary. He brought the survivors' crew, which Philin thinks of as the former thugs of the survivors' crew. Ellen apparently wanted to remind everyone who his friends were. Powerful men, frightening men, men who killed gods. You gotta wonder why anyone is like, yeah, let's take on this group. But whatever. He also thinks that Tindwyl and Sazed are both working as stewards for Elend, which I guess is a natural reaction.
Yeah.
But he says that everyone seems like awed by Elend. It's the new clothing, clean shaved, dueling cane, and a wolfhound at his side. It does sound kind of intimidating.
Yeah. Just the image of him walking in with the dog. We watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a couple of nights ago, and I guess spoilers if you haven't seen that movie.
Oh,
but,
yeah, it's a rough dog scene.
Yeah, I won't go into it, but yeah, I just imagined him like as Brad Pitt and Orsur as the dog, and I'm just like, yeah, you would fear that.
I've never actually seen the movie, so I don't have the correct frame of reference here.
Yeah.
One of those movies
Let's
that I
just
meant to
say,
see and never got around to.
Let's just say, you know how they kill Hitler in Inglourious Bastards?
I do.
The Manson family does not end up killing who they're supposed to kill, and instead they get beat up pretty good.
Well, everyone likes that. No one likes the Mansons. It's all good. And like Ellen's first thing when he comes in is like, okay, well, so who's Chancellor? Philin, you're standing up. Did you get elected Chancellor? And they're like, what? What's a Chancellor? Nobody understands the law like Ellen does because Ellen wrote it for the most part. So I don't even know how they have meetings without him when they're like, we don't understand the basics of what we're doing.
Well, it's like even the meetings with him tend to devolve into just shouting and fist shaking. So presumably that's all the meetings without him are.
That's a fair point. And so they're supposed to elect a chancellor to be in charge until a new king gets elected. Don't elect Hitler chancellor. That's what I've learned from the Secret Hitler game. You lose. It's not good. And Ellen nominates Lord Penrod as the chancellor. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. That works. And apparently Ellen has called this meeting. And everyone thinks that he's going to get up and talk about how upset he is about getting kicked out of being king and so on and so forth. But he comes up and he's like, okay, so I went and met with Strath Venture. And I want to give a report of how that went. And Phil's like, but aren't you going to talk about, king thing? And he's like, I'm pretty sure the people are more worried about the armies, so maybe we should talk about that first.
A good move from Elend, because everyone's expecting him to come in and be whiny and be like, well, why don't you want me to be your king? And he's just come in and gone, you know what? That doesn't matter. Like, let's just try and figure out what to do. And especially Philin over here is like, oh, actually, no, that's probably a much better quality in a king. Not that he's second guessing anything, but he wants him to mess up. He's just gone and spent all this time convincing the whole assembly to vote against Elend, and now Elend walks in as a shining example of what a king should be like. So he's sort of got all this support, however he got it, I don't know, but support around him for him and his candidate. And yeah, now Ellen's just gone and he's slowly going to undo all of that hard work for him. So you can see why he's a little bit unhappy about it.
Yeah, Ellen's acting like a leader, so it may be the first time that they've seen this. So, okay, he explains to everybody that Straff claims that he made an alliance with Cett. I don't believe it, but I wanted to let everyone know. But he is not going to attack the city. And they're like, oh, really? Is it because you're his son? And he's like, no. He has to explain this to everyone because not everyone knows Straff like he does. And he tells everybody, he's like, I realized that we had this resource we weren't using. And he kind of makes a speech about this government was founded by the survivor and his sacrifice and his legacy. And maybe we all feel like we can't live up to that. But we have this piece that he left over, or that he left behind, his apprentice, the person who killed the Lord Ruler. So my father now realizes that if he attacks, he will incur the wrath of the survivor's heir, a wrath not even the Lord Ruler himself could withstand. And that's when he notices Zane is in the audience also. And Zane's just like writing this down to try to use later as more proof to Vin that she's being used. That's the way I imagined it anyway. He's not literally writing stuff down. And really, it's probably a good tack to take, as it says in here, to like associate himself with the survivor's legacy among at least some of them. We've noted before that the noblemen aren't big on the survivor, since he overthrew their old lives completely, basically.
No, but they're also not willing to fight against that.
Yeah, it would be difficult at this point. I mean, there's a reason the Ska managed to take over the city. Can't take them all on.
Yeah.
And there's like a background conversation between Vin and Ham going on about like, are you really okay with this, Vin? She's just like, it's what he needs. And Tindwyl gives them a look and is like, hey, this is important, what he's doing here. Kelsier's currently the most well-loved, most celebrated man in the Central Dominance. By implying the government was founded by the survivor, the king will make people think twice about meddling with it. Kind of makes sense. Although we know the government was really founded by Ellen, pretty much. But
yeah, but calm people will say what they will to each other.
Yeah. And Vin is sitting here thinking, more concerned about, like, she's like, oh, man, I'm starting to wonder if I'm the hero of ages, but now I'm upset about, like, the notoriety that I'm being given. And she's having some personal issues right now that she hasn't really talked to Ellen about from what we've seen. Of course, some of those personal issues are Zane, which would be an awkward conversation to have with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then Ellen gets to the end of his talk and is like, okay, I'm done. And Lord Penrod's like, hey, don't you want to talk about, the king thing? And he's like, you got my letter. You know that I'm unhappy about this, but, we got to move forward and do our thing. And apparently, Tindwyl and him had worked on a whole speech where he was going to talk about why he should be the leader again. And he decides, maybe on instinct, maybe taking a page from Vin's book, that they're like, aren't you going to try to persuade us? And he's like, no, I don't think I will. I believe in the power that you have been given as representatives chosen by the people. And so they're going to end the meeting, and Ellen's like, hey, you probably want to hold nominations for king, because the law says nominations have to be held at least 3 days before the vote. And if you don't do it now, then, unless you want to let the whole month pass without choosing a new king, then you might want to go ahead and get started on this. And once again, nobody knows how the law works for this. You would think somebody would have done the research on how to pick a new king when they ousted the old king. But Penrod's just like, so how do we do this?
That seems a bit incompetent.
I don't know if no one bothers to read the laws and they're just relying on Ellen to tell them everything, or if the laws are too complicated.
I have to think that it's because they haven't had to think about laws ever in their entire lives, because the Lord Ruler and the religion has been the law. And so this other guy who studied ancient laws and how government should work comes in. He's like, yeah, this is the way we do it. And they're like, oh, okay. They just go along with it, thinking, oh, I get power. Sounds good. But yeah, they actually haven't had to taken the time to think about what governing. Like, obviously, Ellen is the best choice for king at this point, because none of these other guys even know how the law works. So
somebody knew enough to start the process to get him like kicked out, but other than that, no one seems to have any idea what's going on.
I mean, that may have been Cett speaking to his friend Phil over here, or whatever his name is.
Could be. Maybe Cett got a copy of the law and was the only one who took the trouble to read it.
Yeah.
He's just like, what the hell are they doing in this city? Here's the law book. What the fuck? This thing is huge.
I can totally see that. One of the Ska jumps up and nominates Penrod to become king. And Ellen's like, hey, if it's not going to be me, Penrod's not a horrible choice. He thinks it's a little bit strange that the Ska immediately want to push another nobleman up there, but he's like, they're still not ready to have someone else leading them, or to think of themselves as the leader here. They'll have to get over that eventually, Vin thought. Oh, so it's Vin thinking this part, sorry, not Ellen. And it's kind of the same stuff that Kelsier used to think, where he kind of looked at the Ska as not quite as sophisticated and like aware as himself, and he's like, well, I'm gonna have to get them over these feelings of being scared of the mist and so on and so forth. And Penrod nominates Ellen Venture, and Breeze is like, oh, this was a brilliant move. Penrod sees himself as honorable and has to act in a way that other people will see him as honorable. So Ellen nominated him for Chancellor. He felt like he had to nominate Ellen for king. And they're like, this was a really deep plan by Ellen here. Like, everyone's impressed by this move. Although I'm now going to go to the annotations where Brandon says Vin and Breeze give him a little too much credit here for getting Penrod to nominate him. While Ellen hoped that by nominating Penrod, he would get him a nomination in return, he wasn't counting on it too much. In this case, Ellen's basic goodness was simply being manifest. He figured that if not a single one of the assembly was willing to nominate him to be king, he had no right to nominate himself. Better to let the matter die there than force a vote when nobody was even willing to consider him for king. So I hope nobody's disappointed that he wasn't quite as deep a chess player here as they think.
I totally buy that. And it makes sense for Ellen's character.
Yeah. And I one of my favorite bits of this chapter is this very subtle bit where earlier in the chapter, Philon's like, there's no way that Ellen knows that I was behind this thing. And then here it was like, Vin is thinking, the merchants must have their own plan. Ellen thinks it's probably Philon who organized the vote against him. And I'm like, stupid merchant thinks he knows so much.
Take that, Phil.
And then Philon gets up very dramatically and is like, I have a nomination. And somebody just yells out, now who's being melodramatic? Just go ahead and nominate yourself. And he asked the questions like, must armor nominations be for people on the assembly? Which is just, once again, nobody knows the rules as we get into this. I mean, maybe Philon does, and he was just making a point to make sure everyone understood. But
I guess if he gets Ellen to say it, no one is going to dispute it because they all know Ellen is all over this shit. Whereas if he says it himself, people will probably just look at Ellen and just go, is that true?
That's a good point.
Also, I'd love to know what would have happened if he'd asked the question and Ellen turned around and went, no, it does have to be someone on the assembly.
That's kind of why I was thinking he must know this, and he's just like trying to get Ellen to say it, because if Ellen turned around and says no, it has to be somebody on the assembly, he'd probably be like, no, see, look here in the law where it says. Because, yeah, this would be a very stupid plan if he didn't know this going in.
There's this awkward disturbance in the audience. This guy in the hooded, bearded outfit. It's like, oh, excuse me, I'm out. See ya.
But apparently, Ellen's like, actually, I accepted the position of assemblyman after the fact. The king's duty is to create and enforce the law, and the assembly is an advisory council with some counterbalancing power. Which is interesting, because that's not exactly what we've seen so far, I don't feel like, is them acting as an advisory council to the king. But I don't know. And it seems weird that the king gets to be a member of the king's advisory council, but the king himself can actually be anyone, and the title was intended to be hereditary. And that is where Philon says, okay, well, I think the title should go to someone who has a little practice with it. So I nominate Lord Ashweather Cett to be our king. And Breeze's response is, oh dear, as someone in the audience pulls the hood off their cloak. And Vin's like, is that really him? And Breeze is like, yep, that is Lord Cett himself. I think we might be in trouble. And that is the end of the chapters. So yeah, I don't know that anyone was expecting that. It's a good twist, in my opinion.
The reason it caught me so much was because it was just a case of I genuinely did not see this coming. I had never expected this, and that's why I'm just like, God damn, that's a hell of a cliffhanger. Whether or not the plan itself is good or bad, I definitely did not see it coming. So I'm like, all right, well played.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's a good twist because I definitely didn't see it coming. But when you think about it, you're like, that's not a bad plan, actually. He has the smaller army than Straff. He's not going to win in a fight, more than likely. This is actually, if he can get elected king, this is a really good plan from his perspective. Anyway, okay. Any final thoughts on these 3 chapters before we move into predicaments?
They should just kill Cett. I mean, it's ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense.
I think it's kind of supposed to mirror what Elend and Vin did going into Straff's camp, where it's like, this is kind of a foolish plan, but it's like a gutsy move that this kind of person might make. I think we've already established that Vin would like to go out and kill Straff and Cett, not Straff and Cett. But it might not be the best plan. Okay, well, then let us get into predigging. What predictions does anyone have? Let's see. Anyone want to go first this time? I've been forcing people to go first.
I'll go first. I don't have much as far as what's actually going to happen. I've only just got, not in terms of big events anyway. I think the main thing is obviously Cett has just dropped in. There'll be a lot of complications there. I'm just waiting for his daughter to find out that he's in the city and just go, oh god no, and run around freaking out, and then Breeze is going to be like, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here, see you guys. It's like Breeze is like on the stage, it's like, just gonna, excuse me, go into the bathroom, I'll be back, never.
I mean, yeah, you have to assume that Cett saw him, right? They're up on the stage in front of everybody, and they had their dramatic entrance.
Big entrance, yeah. So Cett's in the crowd, just going, there you are, you bastard. Where's my daughter? Yeah, but I honestly, I genuinely have no idea where it's going from here. It could, like, the nominations for King could go either way, because I think the presence of Cett is just that unexpected. People might see it as a golden opportunity to unite with another army and fight back against Straff. There might be enough people in the population willing to give Cett a chance, because if they take him on as king, it means like a little bit less bloodshed for them. So, like, there's possibilities there that Cett could still get it. I don't know if he will or not, but yeah, I genuinely have no idea where this is going.
Well, yeah, and partly because we still don't really know Cett. We know Straff and what an asshole he is, and we know apparently Cett has contacts in the city and some balls to have done what he just did. But other than that, we don't really know anything about him still.
I feel like at some stage soon we're probably going to get a Cett viewpoint, whether it to be to introduce sort of him and a bit about him to us as the reader, or sort of what he knows and what he's been experiencing. We've seen a bit into Straff's head now. I was definitely shocked at Cett being there, but I think I've said before, we'd be a bit naive to think that Cett didn't have spies in there and, wasn't involved in some way. I mean, obviously he wants to attack Luthadel, presumably to take over and be king of Luthadel. Whether he's looking for Adium or not, who really knows? But I think it's going to be interesting now to see where the assembly fall. Do we know how they vote in a king? Like, does it go to like a democratic vote, or is it the assembly as the advisors decide who the king is? Or
I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got an equal division of noblemen, merchants, and Scar, and it did seem that even like the noblemen and the Scar seemed to be on board, but the merchants were the ones who were sort of out a little bit from the other two groups, which is really interesting given where the Scar and the nobility have been. So it's like Ellen's done quite a good job to kind of bring those groups together. Any of the noblemen that are still in Luthadel seem to support where things are going, and things are, well, Ellen's trying to make things better for the Scar, but the merchants seem to have been lost a bit in the middle. So even if the merchants were to align with Cett, they are still the minority in that. So you're going to have the Scar probably afraid of both Straff and Cett's ways. They don't want to be oppressed again by these leaders. The nobility, presumably, if they're still in Luthadel, may not want to go exactly to how it was before. So, where would their allegiance lie? It'd be really interesting. I think it will come down to sort of a political battle rather than a physical battle as to where people will align themselves. So I think that'll be really interesting to see how that comes together. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But it really will come down to where people vote. And I can't see the nobility or the Scar voting in someone completely different. But Fillin's a bit scary. He managed to influence everyone on that committee to vote unanimously.
Yep.
And I mean, he belongs to Cett, so who else in there belongs to Straff? There's got to be someone. There's no way he would just not put someone in the assembly. So
what would Straff want the result of the vote to be, though?
Yeah, well, it depends on who's actually aligned with who. He sort of knows what's going on in there, but do Straff and Cett have a plan together? Even though we met, Elend and Straff met previously, Straff seemed to be genuinely frightened of Vin, but it doesn't mean he wouldn't team up and try and still build a stronger army. Like, there are other Mistborn out there, and I think, I can't remember, does he know that they don't have the Adium now? Did Elend let that go?
They told him that they didn't.
He knows.
But at the very end of Straff's chapter, Zane says, "Do you believe them when they say that they don't have the Adium?" And Straff says that Elend managed to manipulate him so completely that he cannot be confident one way or the other.
Yeah, true. So I guess it comes down to, is that a risk he's willing to take as well? Because if they don't have the Adium, I mean, they know still that Vin is a very strong Mistborn, but without the Adium, multiple Mistborn could still take her. Yeah. So I guess I don't really have necessarily a prediction on where it's going to fall at this point, but I think it's all going to be very, very interesting to see where it all goes. I don't know whether Elend would be re-elected as king after all that, but the Assembly might just look at it and go, we just got totally played by Fillin, and then that not come to anything. But Cett's already in Luthadel, so yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it comes down to like a political battle, like you say. You have to question, is Elend, even with his new king lessons, is he skilled enough at the political aspect of it to like come out ahead?
Yeah, exactly. But with all his reading, and he would spend his spare time having political debates with his friends, and
true.
Maybe this is exactly where it should be. It's not about having parley with the other leaders and all that sort of stuff. Maybe it does come down to this, and it's like, actually, this is exactly where he needs to be right now.
Interesting.
And then, look, the Colossus could just walk through and just kill everybody. So
walk in with their bags of cabbages. And
the gates are not guarded very well. So, yeah. I don't know where Orianne is in all of this, too. We haven't really seen her since she's been living in the castle, or Keep Venture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now Daddy shows up. Still don't trust her.
Probably a good call. We've already caught her being a bad spy, so she's not very trustworthy.
Nope.
Okay. Joe, what do you have?
Here's my prediction, not because I definitely think it's going to happen, but because it's definitely what I want. All right, so Cett didn't come alone, right? He's not in the middle of this room alone. Surely he's got soldiers with him.
Oh, Christ, no.
Yeah, so surely he's got soldiers with him. Maybe they're probably in the audience, disguised, whatever it is. I want to fight, just like unmasking. It's like, all right, prepare the swords. Let's do this. Let's rumble. It's probably not going to happen, but that's what I would like to happen. So that's what I'll go for. Okay. I want Cett to die at the end of a sword, like right now. Wow. And then Cett's army is turned on Straff. That'd be great. It'd be fantastic. Either that, or it goes the opposite way, and Elend challenges Cett to a duel, and then Elend dies, and then control the city, and Vin has to leave on her own world adventure to save the world with Sazed. And Tindwyl, sure, she can come too.
That's dark. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just imagine this big fight between Cett's side and the Luthadel side, And then someone just looks over at Zane. He's just sitting there with his feet on a chair. His arms behind his head, just going, "This is great. Give me popcorn."
Yeah, I'm just ready for something to happen, right? We're like halfway through this book now. Let's get it going. Let's get the Sanderlanche rolling.
The Sanderlanche is at the end of the book. Although now that you mention it, we are in fact at the end of this chapter 48% of the way through this book. So right about halfway. Hasn't time flown?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we know what Joe wants. Lots of murder. Just kill everybody. Let God sort them out.
Yeah, the battle.
You can play death metal at their funeral.
Yeah, so there you go. God's death metal band.
Maybe.
Plaintiff.
Maybe to tie into Joe's theory about Orosur. So they have a big battle in here because it turns out there are no members of the public. There is just Straff's people, Cett's people, and Ellen's guards all scattered through the assembly and the audience. Big fight. Cett dies. No one knows that Cett dies. Orosur, who could be Tensoon, becomes Cett, so not to upset Cett's army. But it's really Tensoon who is with Straff. Straff wins.
That would be a really, really simple way of it. Like, nobody has to, like, no wars have to happen at all.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Cett's army just joins Straff's army and everybody's happy. Well, except for the people of Luthadel. They're not happy, but especially Vin and Ellen, they're very unhappy. I guess there's still the Koloss they would have to deal with, though, so... Okay.
No, then Tensoon calls an army of bone blobs to defeat the Koloss somehow.
They're not allowed to kill humans. I wonder if they could kill Koloss.
Yeah, we don't know, man.
Maybe.
It's like you got this epic, like 20, no, not that many, 7-chapter battle between the Koloss and the bone blobs. And at the end, the bone blobs have won. They're standing there just like, God damn it, guys, we did it. And then the Inquisitors drop from the sky. It's like, all right, let's fight, bitches. Just throw everything we can into this conflict. Let's go.
The whole last half of the book is a giant fight.
All right, human. You've been promoted. Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have one email this week, and it is from Retro Rocket, who has sent us emails several times. But there is something strange and suspicious in this email that I'm going to see what you guys think. So,
is it actually Dawson?
Well, okay, so Retro Rocket says, "Hey all, I've been putting off sending in emails because I've been lazy. So I wanted to make Other Girl a thing the episode after it came up, but never actually could find something specific to say about her in the weeks immediately following. And then I just kind of fell off writing things, and I love that you actually made it a thing even without my input. One thing I found interesting about the first episodes is the interaction between the three reactors. Like, Volcano Guy would make an observation about how something was weird. Other Girl would say, like, I never thought about that, and this makes me think, ... and make a reasonable answer. Then Random Person, in parentheses, Joe, would make a suggestion somewhat based on
brutal.
Other Girl, but go in a completely different direction without the support of the book. So I would say Volcano Guy was wrong, but at least his suggestion was, like, somewhat supported. In case someone forgot, I'm pretty sure it was Joe, in parentheses, Random Person, who suggested that Vin was the Lord Ruler's daughter. Honestly, can't remember. I haven't rewatched the early episodes in a while. Also, I just want to say the scene where Vin was talking to her dog and they came to an understanding is my favorite scene in the book, though there are a lot of great ones. The scene raised Vin from good character to my favorite that Brandon has written, even including the Stormlight books. Oh, he says, I love the reveal that Straff's mistresses were actually to breed Allomancers. He was doing this before the Lord Ruler's death, and it seems like he probably included Ska mistresses in that. I wonder if he got away with it, or if he actually only used noble women. That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Also, why am I a Random Person? I've been here since the beginning.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I was like, of all the names you could give him?
But no, I just I like that it was, as we know, our good friend Jackson, who came up, who started with giving these names of like Other Girl and stuff, and then Retro Rocket writes in an entire email using the same sort of naming scheme, and I was like, now I'm suspicious. Maybe Retro Rocket
Jefferson
is actually the same person as
Jefferson. You're not fooling anyone, okay? You're not Retro Rocket, or you are Retro Rocket.
It's one of the two. You either are or you're not.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
No, well, we'll just email us, Richard. Why don't we do this? Retro Rocket and Jacob, you guys email us at the same time, and then we'll see what's what.
But everyone has apparently been very entertained by Jamie being other girl. Joe's random guy. It's really great.
Yeah. we sound like we got a whole team here, right? Like we could be superheroes. New Avengers lineup, volcano guy, random guy, and other girl.
It reminds me of Teen Girl Squad, where it's like so and so.
What's her face?
God.
The
Other
ugly
one.
one. No, it's the ugly one.
I know, but the other one fit better with what we were doing.
That is a deep cut.
Yeah. Homestar Runner, man.
Jamie, what do you think?
Huh.
No outrageous comments about other girl. But I'm kind of used to it. When I was a kid, our dog knew my brother by his first name, but didn't know me by my first name. So for growing up, it was, where's Daniel? And then, where's the kids? And I was always the kids. So, yeah. Thanks, Jackson. You bring up all these traumatic memories of my childhood.
Okay, let's we'll hit the
Trauma.
let's hit the wrap up.
You wrap it up.
I am going to wrap it up. Thank you.
As spook. Rap as spook.
A spook rap? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right. I've been writing some songs lately. I'll compose it.
Okay, you compose the spook rap, and we'll put it out on YouTube. It'll be the number one hit single.
Yeah.
Oh, that can be like the theme song for the next predictions emails episode after the book.
Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We gotta have, what is it? Wuzzing with the Street Life? That'll be the name of the song.
Okay, so that is all the emails for next time. We are reading, again, 3 chapters, so it'd be 32, 33, and 34 for episode 11 of this book. I call it episode 11. I mean, it's actually, the numbering is way different from that. I'm just looking at my list of episodes. This was episode 10, in case anyone was wondering.
10 does come before 11, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
I'm good at the
I
counting.
wouldn't. We wouldn't refer to it that way because when you look at it on podcasts, you're not going to see 11. It's going to say.
Oh, it's going to be like 28 or 29 or something. Yeah. So
True.
Anyway, I just confused it more than it needed to be. So for next time, 32, 33, and 34. Maybe we'll finally get that action that Joe's been dying to have.
Yeah. Do you guys? Hey, Jamie, did you want me to sing the song?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Vin and Orser being best friends, together forever, the fun never ends. Solving mysteries, one kill at a time. Vin and Orser, 2 of a kind.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
Yep, that's the song.
Oh,
But it was just the last line over and over and over.
2 of a kind. Yep.
And over again. I was like, oh my god, it needs to stop.
Yeah.
When you said, do you want me to sing the song? I was like, but he's not going to write the rap. He hasn't written it yet. I didn't remember the earlier discussion about the Vin and Orser song.
That was, we drove back to the beginning of the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it.
So come back next time.
We need to do a death metal cover for God to sing.
Yeah. Again, I'm not taking creative credit for that tune. That came from the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. A very funny show. You should watch.
Our music is by Miracle of Sound, not from the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
That's true.
While we're acknowledging, let's throw that out there too. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week. Wuzzing to the time of next, everyone.
And we try to keep a little beauty in the world. All that died, we keep it in our hands. We are the fading voice. Keep it in our hands. We tell it to the page. Ooh, we never let it fade.